Hello, I'm Shireen Smith and I'm going to explain why I've set up a second business and expect to crush it as an olderpreneur. According to a report last year from the Institute of Directors, a growing number of people are starting their own businesses in later life. The Financial Times says much the same thing in their article. Over 50s are the new business startup generation, apparently, and the FT has some very encouraging statistics for anyone considering starting out again after 50. Apparently, businesses set up by the over 50s are more likely to still be trading 5 years later than those established by younger age groups. A study by Jones, Javier Miranda of the US Census Bureau and MIT's Pierre Azzulli and J. Daniel Kim looked at an expansive data set and actually supports these findings. Reporting on this research in June 2018, CNBC outlined why Silicon Valley's ideal entrepreneur is about 20 years too young. They pointed out how the research shows that older entrepreneurs have a much greater chance of success in their projects than younger ones. The most successful entrepreneurs are middle-aged, apparently. The research said this: we find that age indeed predicts success, and sharply, but in the opposite way that many observers and investors propose. The highest success rates in entrepreneurship come from founders in middle age and beyond. They find no evidence to suggest that founders in their 20s are especially likely to succeed. Rather, all the evidence points to founders being especially successful when starting businesses in middle age or beyond, while actually young founders appear disadvantaged. So the study found that the average founder of the fastest growing tech startups was about 45 years old, and 50-year-old entrepreneurs were about twice as likely to have a runaway business success as their 30-year-old counterparts. As Jones says of the findings, they could help unlock more innovative potential from the many people in the economy that are middle-aged and beyond. So why older entrepreneurs are more successful? Explaining some possible reasons for these findings, the authors of Age and High Growth Entrepreneurship point out that the greater management, marketing, and finance experience that older entrepreneurs tend to bring to the table, as it were, as well as a richer, deeper knowledge of an industry, is the reason. Also quite important is that older entrepreneurs are likely to have larger financial resources to tap and more social networks to mine for support in leveraging their idea. Writing in the Harvard Business Review, they explained, "We found that work experience plays a critical role. Relative to founders with no relevant experience, those with at least 3 years of prior work experience in the same narrow industry as their startup were 85% more likely to launch a highly successful startup." The Institute of Directors report attributes this trend to the shake-up from the recession, a view backed by the FT. Apparently, the over 55s are unable to get corporate jobs and so are turning to self-employment instead. This is all music to my ears. You see, previously I'd been seeing reports in the media about how baby boomers were coming up to retirement age, that they were leaving the workforce, rather than about how so many of them actually are starting up ventures in their 50s and 60s and actually crushing it by all accounts. Reasons to start new businesses. Well, the desire to supplement income is obviously just one part of the story. After all, money is never the only driver for engaging in any activity. I wonder whether these reports may be overlooking another important reason that people may be starting up in business, rather than retiring. For myself, the work I do gives me a sense of fulfillment and purpose. I love to have a project on the go, and that's why, far from wanting to retire, I've actually gone on to set up a second business to exploit my skills, Azrights International Ltd. Now, Professor Dame Sally Davis, the Chief Medical Officer, wrote a report a couple of years back saying that those between the ages of 50 and 70 were healthier if they kept on working. Even the over 80s benefit. Reportedly, an 89-year-old former soldier, Joe Bartley from Devon, advertised for a job because he was bored. He now works as a table clearer in a local cafe. But I'm wondering why the FT thought this was newsworthy. When we reach older ages, none of us actually feels old. I have as much mental energy as I ever had. In fact, more so now that I'm free of childcare responsibilities and can devote my time and energy to the pursuit of my life and business goals. You see, people don't change just because their age advances by a few years. Retiring into the sunset to put your feet up and while away the rest of your years is rarely an appealing prospect for anyone, except perhaps for those whose skills sadly involve use of physically challenging work, or for those who've got an absorbing hobby maybe that they prefer to pursue rather than to continue working. For the rest of us who have built up our skills over a lifetime, an existence without work would lack purpose and meaning. I personally want to work till I drop. I would hate not to have a project to keep me connected to the world. I love entrepreneurship, innovation, and new technologies. So why wouldn't I want to continue working? Yet we live in a very ageist society that reveres youth. Ageist attitudes mean that society is expecting us to retire rather than start up new ventures. So it's inevitable that some of these attitudes will be internalized so that we believe somewhere deep inside us that we're too old. You see, the 20 or 30-year-old me would have written someone of my age off, definitely. I would have thought myself completely past it by now. How prejudiced was I? And yet, here I am now, an older person myself. It's just the way of the world, I guess. Doesn't every younger generation tend to regard even those who are just 10 or 15 years older than them as somehow over the hilt or vastly aged? So unsurprisingly, I do find that the widespread ageism affects my self-belief occasionally. Yeah, I catch myself fleetingly having a limiting belief. For example, recently I've been planning to improve my public speaking skills, enrolled on a course, etc. So public speaking is an activity I've been really ambivalent about most of my life. When I'm asked to speak, I accept, but I never actively seek out opportunities to speak. However, I realize that when you have a message to communicate to the world, then speaking on stage is a necessary part of that. So I'm trying to dispel the fleeting negative thoughts that cross my mind. You know, to be honest, occasionally as I hear myself thinking things like, why bother with public speaking at your age? Aren't you a bit past it? What are you realistically likely to achieve now? Isn't it too late to improve your skills by now? Are they not fixed? Well, no, it's never too late. I know that. I'm inspired by stories such as about the Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama, who at 89 years of age has emerged in the last 5 years to become a highly sought-after artist. Success had eluded her till her 80s, according to a Guardian article about her. It really heartens me when I hear people achieving success so much later in life or continuing to have thriving careers well into their 80s. Take Mary Berry, who is still featuring in the BBC's TV shows in her 80s. And there's Prue Leith, who has not only a highly successful career, but has also found love again and remarried at the age of 76, I think. So work and contribution. Millennials are certainly likely to need to continue working into their 70s, judging by the pension crisis in the world. You know, I've always advised my own daughters to pursue work that they love. It's especially important if you're a millennial to do work that you really enjoy, because you know you may have to be doing it well into your 70s, or at least for a very long time. Certainly in my own case, after 14 years in business, I'm still looking to contribute in more meaningful ways and, you know, engage in activities that are truly fulfilling and help me to grow on a personal level, acquire new skills. I'm a different person today to the one who first started in business in 2004. My business skills are honed by now, adding to the depth of expertise that I can offer in my core topic of intellectual property. Now, intellectual property is what enables people to protect what's theirs, you know, their very ideas, their market share, and avoid having their best ideas ripped off and copied, and much more. So it's a subject that is inherently intertwined with business and that people don't get. That's why I set up my second business, to provide online courses and coaching. It means I can help people make the most of their ideas, decide what to protect, how to choose a good name, and so on. As part of a coaching service, I can also add these elements of knowledge to provide the help that people need. I've got big plans for my second business, Azrights International Ltd. The legally branded online course that I've created is soon going to be rolled out to medium-sized businesses. It's currently suitable for startups and small businesses, and is the culmination of 6 years' work distilling intellectual property to a few basic business processes that businesses need to adopt. So I can help any business worldwide to introduce systems and processes to protect their intellectual property on an ongoing basis as they develop new ideas and start new projects. You see, much of intellectual property protection actually happens very, very early on. The very act of choosing names, of making decisions to commission things like branding, websites, apps, all this, deciding what information to reveal to other people, how to promote new concepts and so on. All these have significant implications on a company's intellectual property prospects. These steps necessarily have to happen before a lawyer is even consulted. So having insight about what to do and what not to do at various touch points in a business is essential that businesses take on board. Intellectual property is a business skill everyone needs to acquire. It's not just a legal subject to leave to the lawyers. Without it, you're at a disadvantage when implementing new ideas and projects in your business in today's digital economy. I can make a far greater contribution by adding business coaching to the services I offer. So it's exciting to use my knowledge and skills in new ways, and I'm intending to expand my topics too, to include related non-law ones, such as marketing and even personal development, because they all impact branding and naming and how you develop a business. The entire activity of branding is closely related to intellectual property, and yet there are a lot of people out there selling design services under the umbrella of branding. Many people believe that a brand is a logo. So this is a topic that is close to my heart. It needs greater professionalism to be brought to bear on it. Anyone who is choosing names and doesn't understand the intellectual property implications of naming needs to upskill themselves urgently. They can do so by getting Legally Branded Academy, my online course. Expanding the topics that I know deeply means I can keep learning, and it's something I love to do, and then I can contribute in wider, more meaningful ways. So in conclusion, I think life is short. At the end of the day, you're going to ask yourself the question, or your children will wonder on your behalf, as I did on my parents' behalf when they died. What was it all about? What were you put on this earth to do? What did you achieve? I believe that what we do can touch other people's lives in ways that we'll never know. So it's not necessarily my own visible achievements that will ultimately matter the most. Who knows how others might be impacted or benefit from my existence or ideas? I hope they do. The important thing is to continue contributing to the world. And I am so pleased the ranks of olderpreneurs look likely to swell further in the future, because olderpreneurs have a lot to contribute. They've got their wisdom and experience and so much more to give. They also have many years of productive work ahead of them.